in-breath. Like that, what the in-breath does is activates this.
What is going on, you guys? My name is Kyle Sulkar. Welcome back to the 4 Stars podcast. We've got Steve Bechtold here for a round 2, the beginning of his saga of different mindfulness, fitness, life coaching, advice. And today we're going to be talking about an amazing topic that he is very, very knowledgeable about, and that is meditation. So, Steve, what is going on?
Not a whole lot. Well, first off, thank you for having me come back.
Of course.
I really enjoyed doing the last one, and any chance that I get to share knowledge and information with people is great. And yeah, I have a lot of fun doing it. So
yeah,
I appreciate
definitely.
it.
No, we had really good feedback, and I think now, we kind of set the groundwork on the last podcast, for who you were, and now we can kind of go into more of your knowledge. And I'm super excited to talk about something that's, not up and coming, but meditation is slowly becoming something people are a little bit more mindful of because they're realizing they have control over their, mind and their thoughts. And especially in a year like this year, it's something that we want to focus on.
Yeah, that mindfulness is something, and meditation, more specifically, is something that I take very seriously.
Yeah. And
what's crazy is it's something that I never took very seriously. Right before we got on, you and I were chatting about how long I've been meditating and like what got me into it. Yeah. And I was sharing with you that, I started personal training people, over a decade, 13 years ago. And I was very fortunate that being, 18 years old, well, 17, I lied on my application, but being 18 years old and getting hired at this gym, I had these amazing clients who were just, high-level performers. I mean, mainly it was just crazy. I had like all business owners, people that like started tech companies, just a really high-end clientele. And 80% of them had a daily meditation practice.
Wow.
And told me probably for 4 years that I was at this club that I should start it. I was given different videos to do. I was giving all these things that you see all these people that they have something that you want.
Yeah.
And you would think you have a mentor, you have somebody like that is giving you the coaching.
Yeah.
And you just don't do it. I mean, it's probably my ignorance, my young, early 20s and, thinking that I knew it all. But I only really got serious about it about 4 years ago.
That's a crazy little, even like a side note of taking other people's advice. It's not even, I don't even say it's egotistical. It's like when you hear something like that and somebody says, hey, you really should do this. It's like, think about what, from their perspective, why they're saying you should do this. It's probably because they're very passionate about it, probably because it works for them. And it's funny because it's a very good point how things just kind of go over your head. And,
yep. And it wasn't as tangible for me.
Yeah.
It's like, my whole background is, fitness and working out in the gym, and that's, hey, if you increase your calories per day by 1,000 calories, like you're gonna be gaining weight week by week. If you increase your caloric expenditure, you're burning more, you're gonna lose it. For somebody to say, hey, sit down, close your eyes and breathe, and it's gonna change your life, you're gonna attract the future. It's just like you sit there and you're like, yeah, thanks. Like you throw it in the back. It's like I'm busy enough. I don't need, to try and throw something else in there that's not even tangible.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest step of ignorance on my part. It is extremely tangible, and there is so much research coming out of the benefits of mindfulness, mindfulness-based practice, of meditation, of yoga. So it's incredible. No,
that's awesome. So I mean, you're like training with clients is 80%. I mean, so a good majority of them were like, and those people, they at that point, repeat clients, probably more so somebody who is high level and they want somebody to maybe keep them in check because they know the importance of it. Maybe lesser so somebody who's, it's January 1st and they're like, I want to start going to the gym. So this is kind of part of you're finding people who have these really good routines. And
exactly.
And I guess it helped you develop your stuff. So when did you first start? How did you get started? And then where do you think the mistakes and good things kind of lie?
Man, so really, I think this book, it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And it just struck a chord with me because as I was reading this book, it really broke down like the science behind it. What really happens when you're quieting your mind, when you're focusing on your breath? What are the physiological effects And then what's the downstream effect of those physiological effects?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just jump right into it because I love to nerd out about this stuff.
Yeah.
So let's take something simple first, like the breathing. So when I first started meditating, I have crazy monkey mind. It's hard for me to sit still. I think it helps in the entrepreneur route, but it doesn't help in the meditation route.
Sure.
So I love Tim Ferriss. Dude is awesome. Everybody, shout out to Tim
Yeah,
Ferriss.
he's
but
the best, yeah.
it was one of his, Friday, 5 Bullet Fridays or whatever it is, and he suggested Headspace.
Yep.
So I was like, you know what, I'm finally going to do this. And it was after I had read that book, I downloaded Headspace because I'm like, this will be my way to start my mindfulness journey. And it focused on your breathing. So when we focus on our breathing, what's so great about it is you have to be in the present moment.
Yeah.
Your breath is not going to be in the future. And it's not going to be in the past. It's in this moment. And in the Headspace app, they give you those 10 sessions for free. I'm sure it's way better now.
Yeah.
But they give you those 10 sessions. And literally, you're just trying to focus on your breath. Yeah. Can you count your breaths? And you have Andy. Andy is guiding your meditation journey.
He's so good.
Yeah. And I could not count 10 breaths.
Yeah.
Like, it took me 6 months to be able to count 10 breaths. I mean, I could maybe tell myself I counted 10 breaths, and I'm like thinking, oh shit, I forgot it. I gotta send that email back, 9, and oh yeah, I gotta do this.
Yeah.
But I really could not be just with my breath. Mm-hmm. Now, let's look at some of the science behind this. All right, so you're breathing. So we have, our nervous system, right? And we have what's called our autonomic nervous system. So autonomic, think automatic. This is kind of some of the stuff, your fight or flight response, your rest and digest. There's actually 2 branches of the autonomic nervous system. There's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Mm-hmm. So those 2 branches are essentially your fight and flight and your rest and digest.
Got it.
So we have a parameter called heart rate variability, HRV. It's a parameter that they actually use in therapy and with some people with depression and anxiety. So we could get back to that later.
Yeah.
But what HRV is it's the variability between each heartbeat. So most of us think like, okay, if I have a low heart rate, that's great. Yes, it absolutely is. What we want, though, is with that low heart rate is we want variability between each beat. So what that means is, let's say we'll use easy numbers. You have 60 beats per minute. So hypothetically, you would think 1 beat per second, right? If you had 1 beat per second, like a metronome, just that would give you a very low heart rate variability. Because when your heart rhythm is very in sync, it actually means you're stressed. When we work out, when we build up a stress response, when, oh shit, a tiger just walked in the room, your heart's going to beat in sync, your pupils are going to dilate, and your adrenaline's going to go up because you're going to be so in the moment because shit's going to go down if you're not.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
The parasympathetic nervous system is actually activated when you breathe out. It's through the exhale. So if you've ever heard of meditations where like you really want to focus on the exhale, or you take a deep breath in and slowly let it out, those are relaxation techniques because they switch that parasympathetic system on. So your heart rate should vary beat by beat based on your in-breath and your out-breath. And the more variability you have, so let's use that 60 beats per minute, right? Let's say it's 1.1 seconds, then it's 0.9 seconds, then it's 1.4, 0.96. They're always going to come out to that even number, but the more variability, the more relaxed your body is.
Wow. Okay.
Crazy, right?
So it's like less focus you have on that area, the more it's able to do its natural tendencies in a
to a certain extent. So what I kind of relate this to is that's kind of how stressed or agitated the body is. Mm-hmm. So PTSD sufferers, somebody who's had trauma within their life, normally will have a very low heart rate variability. Mm-hmm. And that means that they're kind of on edge. If you have anxiety, your heart rate variability is going to be very low.
Yeah.
If you had a hard workout and your body's recovering, your heart rate variability is going to be very low. If you are sick, your heart rate variability is going to be very low. Increased heart rate variability is directly correlated to emotional stability, willpower, and focus.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Yeah.
So all of those amazing benefits from this one little metric, mindfulness, a breathing practice, meditation, yoga, all statistically increase heart rate variability.
So it kind of forces you into the heart variability. Well, forces is a weird word to use in that context, but still, like, it makes you like get your heart rate variability better. Well, you'd think stable is better, but this is the opposite, right?
Yep.
Exactly opposite of what you think.
So it's essentially you're able to be more relaxed.
Got it.
So you're really allowing that rest and digest, that relax response. And there's so many ways to train this. So you may have heard of the vagus nerve, or you may have not heard of the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is where those two systems wrap together. It's a bundle of nerves coming down. And the vagus nerve, they call it vagus nerve tone or vagal tone. And that's basically training the system. So a great way to train it, a little bit extreme, but I do consider this meditation. And for somebody who cannot meditate, if you really want to feel what it's like to get in a deep meditation and cheat, I'm going to tell you how right now. You're not going to like it. Cold showers.
Really?
Cold showers and a breathing practice. I am obsessed with the Wim Hof method because it is so fast. Literally, the first time you do it, you're going to notice a difference with this. Have you ever tried Wim Hof before?
No. I've tried cold showers, not like super religiously, though.
So. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to break this down. Yeah. All right, get ready. We're going to nerd out into some science right now. So the Wim Hof method, if I'm going to kind of sum it up and break it down, you essentially hyperventilate. So what you do is you take a deep inhale and then you just let go. So I think you breathe in 100%, let go 80%. And then you do this over and over for about 30 to 40 breaths, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Keep on going like that. What happens is you over-oxygenate your system. Okay? So what happens is when you over-oxygenate your system, you get more oxygen in your bloodstream. It actually raises the pH in your blood. Okay? Because, oxygen is going to raise our acidic level, our pH.
Yeah.
So when you raise that up, you start to get this tingling feeling in your fingers. And then what he has you do is after about 30 or 40 breaths, you exhale and hold your breath. So there's no oxygen in your lungs. You just hyperventilated for like 2 minutes straight, and you just sit there. What's crazy is we do not have the urge to breathe due to a lack of oxygen. That's not what makes you feel like you're suffocating. What makes us feel like we're suffocating is a buildup of carbon dioxide within our blood. We have what's called these chemoreceptors, which basically monitor our bloodstream, because as a species, basically all life, majority of life on Earth, if we're not getting oxygen, shit's not good.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So we have these little receptors, and what happens is you sit there and you're fine. Your O2 levels are high. I've, because I nerd out, I've done this with a pulsometer, where they check your O2 levels.
Yeah.
And they'll stay high, but your mind will mess with you.
Really?
So your mind will sit there. And I remember the first time I was doing this, it was so funny because I was sitting in my, I recommend doing it lying down, but the first time I did it, I was sitting in like a meditation, legs crossed. And I did it, and there's great ones online, YouTube videos. You follow along, it makes a drumming beat to it, and it'll tell you when to hold, how to do it, and everything. And I remember I held my breath for the first time for 45 seconds, which I was like, holy crap. I remember like 30 seconds playing with like my brother in the pool or something like that, so who could hold their breath the longest. First time ever, 45 seconds. You do 3 rounds of this. So then you go back into that heavy breathing, and then you do a breath hold. I made it to 1:15, my second one. Then on my third one, my fingers were like tingling around 20 breaths. I could feel my toes tingling. And it was like in my head, I kind of heard like, whoom, 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 whoom. And I got to like this deep out of body, like just chilled out space. It was like I had no care in the world.
Really?
I could feel like my pulse through my entire body. And it was just like the most chill. It was like slow motion in movies, it's like somebody like falls out the window and it's like,
yeah,
and they're just like going through the glass. And then I felt amazing. Like I felt so good. Like it was like ecstasy, right?
Yeah.
Just feeling amazing. And then all of a sudden my mind started messing with me. So I'm sitting there and then all of a sudden it's like, how long have you been holding your breath? Like, this has been a while. And then my mind is like, in the back of my head, it's like, dude, don't be the dumbass who holds your breath so long you pass out and hit your head, fall down on the floor, and I'm going to be like, in a concussion in my room and stuff like this. But I held my breath for 1:40 seconds.
Wow.
And this was the first time I ever did it. And now I've done different breathing things before, so, it makes sense. But you do that. You do 3 rounds of that, and that's the breathing practice. Then you go into the cold shower. So what happens is when you do that breathing before it, you're like in a trance. You're in the freaking zone at that point. Then when you go into the cold shower, what happens is I thought it was so much about fighting this, like, oh, come on, pump up, like, let's do this, just get in there and you make it happen. And I really realized it's not forcing it. It's allowing it, just letting it happen in the sense of the anticipation of how cold it's going to be, of like, I got to fight through this, is always worse than the mindfulness and acceptance of, let me just feel this. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And, when you really accept what's coming in, which I think is such a key component of mindfulness, and you don't put expectations like, this is going to suck, it's horrible. You just feel it, and you're like the cold, like, feels alive. Like, and it's such a shock that it takes your breath away, and you have to focus on your exhale, because that's what calms the parasympathetic nervous system down. So when you get in a cold shower, what's going to happen is you're going to go, and you take in breaths like that. What the in-breath does is activates the sympathetic nervous system. It activates the stress response. So now you're trying to fight it. You're shivering. When you focus on the exhale, when you control your breath, you stop shivering. Your body can combat the cold. Human beings are a resilient species. We were not designed to live inside a temperature-controlled environment.
Yeah.
You can last in a shower for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But your mind will tell you, you're going to die. You're going to have a cold response. You're going to slip and fall and hit your head on the corner of the bathtub, and you're going to be the asshole who died in the bathtub because you took a cold shower.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And what happens is, when you're able to control that voice that screams in your head, and you're able to control your breath and just feel what's happening, it's like so much easier than you ever anticipated. What makes the cold shower hard is when you're like, how much longer? How long? Is it going to get worse? If you just feel it, it's nowhere near as worse as your mind makes it up to be.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is that now that you mention it, I'm like, okay, I've heard of this before, and it was in a David Blaine video. He was teaching people how to go and hold their breath underwater.
Yep.
Obviously, they had to be monitored, but he took a bunch of celebrities and stuff, and they're all worried. And I think that's essentially the same kind of idea. I think he did, the same method, kind of like long breaths in.
They're
short
diving
breaths out.
tables. Yep. Yep.
So I think, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's more for like stunt purpose, holding your breath. But I think a lot of his whole philosophy behind it was getting yourself in the state to be able to do it, because your body can do it.
Yep.
But you need to be able to be in the state previously to do it. And I'm sure when you're in that state and you go into the cold shower, it makes cold showers a lot easier. Because the problem I've learned with cold showers is that everyone's like, wake up at 4:30 a.m. and hop in the cold shower. And it's like, well, when you're in a warm bed, the barrier to entry to get into that cold shower is very high. Like, very high. Like, you should say, hey, 4:30, maybe grab a coffee and, take a warm, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just like, when you make it so difficult for yourself, your mind's like, don't do that right now.
Yep.
But when you're getting into that state, you're probably, on top of being in that, overall looking to improve or whatever, but it makes it that much easier maybe to be receptive to it.
Yup, it really gets you in the zone where you're like indestructible, And what's so cool about it is, when you're hyperventilating and holding your breath, like, you're not really worrying about everything else. Or if you are, you're going to realize your breath hold sucks, because you're going to be worried. And then that stress and worry of thoughts will make your body freak out and think it's suffocating. And what's crazy is, I had times where I made like half the time and I was like, I'm pushing so hard, but it's usually when I have the monkey mind, when I'm just like a little nervous about something, or I know I have something coming up. But once you can flush that, and normally by that third breath practice, you're so in the zone, especially if you do it with the drumming, it like just gets you like really in a trance, that it feels great to really just feel your body. And it helps you recognize that at other points throughout your day. Because I think one of the biggest tips for even diet and weight loss is being mindful. I, just like everybody else, I love eating bad food. I love, letting the Cookie Monster out at like 10:30 p.m. and I just eat whatever food and watch a movie. That's great. But what's funny is, a lot of times what'll happen is, I eat like a nice dinner, right? Or I have something, I should be satisfied. And then afterwards, you're full. But then that little monster comes out and it's like, it'd be good right now, a little snack. It's like, it'd be good, something sweet, some ice cream, something cold. You're like, for sure. Fuck, shut up. And the thing of it is when I'm mindful, sometimes I can, that doesn't always work, but sometimes you could sit there and be like, all right, like, how do I feel? Like, what do I really want? And when I check in with my body, it's not my stomach that wants the food. It's not anything, because in most cases, it's after I already ate dinner and I'm probably a little bit full, or if anything, uncomfortable. So it's funny because that mindfulness blends into everything else. So many times I sit down there on the computer and I'll do like a little mindfulness, minute or two right before I start, because I'll be like, shit, I don't want to write this program. I don't really want to write this script. I don't want to do this. And I sit there and it's like, I'm just so tired, this and this. I'm like, okay, you're tired. Where are you tired? Is it your eyes? Is it your forehead? Is it your feet? Is it your shoulders? And then I'm like, okay, well, it's my shoulders. I just feel like this day is just kicked my ass. And as you start dissecting it, you really realize, like, you're not. Or if you sit there and you really realize you are, which it normally isn't the case, it's more the procrastination.
Yeah.
You can listen to the body and give it what it needs.
For sure. No, that's crazy. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I always attributed a good workout to like good lift to running beforehand, like running a mile. And the way I got through the mile every day was like not paying attention to the speed, obviously, but then telling myself I did it yesterday so I could do it today. That was just a little thing. And then that always led up into the reason I did it was less or so for the 100 or whatever calories you burn. It was more so for the impact it had on my workouts, because it got me in that zone where if I just walk in the gym and start, going to the bench press, whatever, I'm like, you might get like, I don't feel right. But when you're sweating, you're like, I don't know, maybe it has a heart rate variability. Maybe it's the mindset. You're like, I'm in the, you're feeling your body. You're like, this is what I'm doing.
Yep.
You're kind of immersed in it. So.
Yep. There's so much to be said for, your mental state when you do anything.
Yeah.
If you can get into a flow state when you're doing creative work, whether you're making music, doing visuals or anything like that, you get so much more done.
Yeah.
So I think our mental state, before you work out, one of the things that I used to love to do is, the cardio gets the blood flowing. That's, going to get your body ready. It's like, all right, what's going on? We're a little bit stressed. I used to love watching like these motivational videos, of bodybuilders or something, and you're like, oh God, they're like lifting so much weight. I want to go do something. And getting myself into a mental state before I perform any task allows me to get so much more out of that task.
Yeah.
I used to go to the gym, and I realized when I was doing my one of my last shows, like there are times you have to drag yourself there. And what I would realize is versus just, hey, get in the gym and just get it over with.
Yeah.
If I would spend 10, 15, even 30 minutes in the car watching videos, changing my mindset, let's say if I dedicated 90 minutes to be there, if I spent 30 minutes getting my mind right, those 60 minutes would trump two of those 90-minute workouts.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's so much to be said for mindset.
Yeah, I think that's a good, because it does directly relate to meditation. Whether you're even if you like aren't even into meditation, you're like, I'm not gonna be able to do that, or whatever it may be. Maybe the starter portion is that, like mindfulness, like you always say, and getting in the right mindset. Like even prolonging like long cardio workouts or anything like that, or even a good lift. It's like the lifting part I haven't dialed in as far as like getting into it, but you're having a good one when you don't have to change the song in your playlist, because you're listening to something, you're just like not even, when you're changing it, it's like you're on your phone or whatever. It's like the more you're disconnected, like the more on the treadmill, I always like to get in my own head. I think about like my wildest aspirations and whatever it may be. No, I'm not saying it out loud, so I can do whatever I want, and it just the time goes by, and that's why running long distances like outside is good, because it's like ADD. It's like you can just be mindful of your surroundings almost. Which is
so
crazy.
There's some science behind that as well.
Really?
So when we look at the flow state, flow is another thing that I'm fascinated by. It's something called transient hypofrontality. So really what it just means is different areas of your brain shut off. So with flow state, one of the things that they find with it, and I think this mirrors meditation deeply, is you start to lose sense of yourself. This is an example of this is like athletes, let's say racing, right? We like cars. There's a lot of drivers that say that they feel like they become part of the car. They could feel the road underneath them, when they hit that flow state. Same thing with skiers, on hills or surfers. There's so much of this, you lose sense of yourself. You become one with the wave. You become one with the mountain. So that's actually due to the fact that when this transient hypofrontality happens and you kind of start to shut off different areas of the mind, the areas that remember you and your identity start to turn off. What that does, though, is it turns on these other areas, these more primal areas that are extremely fast processing. Yeah. So another key element in flow is time dilation. Time dilation is, hey, you sat down to do a project, you're writing some music, and all of a sudden you look back up at the clock and 3 hours went by. You're like, what the hell just happened? Yeah. Or the complete opposite side of that, an athlete, you're in the zone, and it just kind of seems like every move flows into the next, and it's almost like it's not slow motion, but it's just like you just know, and your body's on autopilot. So all of these are phenomenon that happen within the brain, and this is where I get more and more into the science of it. I believe that these can be tapped into and trained through different experiences, but more so through meditation. Yeah. And that's really what happens a lot with these cold showers, with meditation, with mindfulness, with recognizing your thoughts. It's stopping those different areas of the mind that are freaking out and realizing which ones are letting you say, hey, let's look at a bird's eye view and see what's going on here. Is this something that's okay?
For sure. I think that's I don't know. That's crazy because a lot of people look at it as like woo-woo, right? But it's like if you look at most of the problems, your inconsistencies or procrastination areas in life, it's probably because of that. Because even in like the entrepreneur or business space, I always look at it, I'm like, man, there's so many, it's like I'm doing so many different things, and those so many different things take away from me doing one thing. And all it takes is that one thing to do at scale well, and it'll trump all these other things, like by far, So I think, whether it's a business you're working on or whether it's fitness, stuff like that, and like, I don't know. It's so interesting. And I think you're right 100% because it's like, that's the state you need to be in to kind of be mindful of everything, your surroundings, what you're actually doing, not just sitting at a computer for 5 hours and sitting there and, whatever you're doing, but even if you applied mindful 1 hour might trump that.
So the flow state, mindfulness, everything, we're going with this. One thing that has to happen with it is it has to be in the present moment. So the areas of your brain that focus on the past, that focus on the future, if they're on, you're not hitting the state. Period.
Wow.
Period. Yeah.
Okay.
So once you're in that complete present moment, that's when you have unlimited access to all of this, because think about it. Anytime you've like lost track of time, you're not because you're worrying about something else or something like that. You might be deep in thought or something, but it's not usually a worry or a fear, or when you go and you're at the mountaintop, you climbed up a hike and you just look at everything. It's like these moments of awe and real authentic joy are only in the present moment. It's only in the present moment.
That's crazy to think about, because people say it in a bunch of different ways, but I think like just thinking about, wow, you're like, because you're only technically happy in the present moment.
So another great book on the meditation is that I liked. Well, it's a lot, not just meditation, but it's called Solve for Happy by Mo Gaudat.
Oh yeah,
have you heard of this one?
Yeah. I'm like halfway through it. Yeah,
yep,
really
he's
good.
the Google X guy. He was the chief
away,
business
right?
officer. Yeah. He had a son who passed away. This guy basically had everything in life. Amazing job, all of this stuff, a great family, and he just didn't feel like he was happy. And then he had a horribly tragic event where his son, died in a routine medical procedure.
Yeah.
And it really made him go on this quest. He's an engineer, which I love. So he said he wants to solve for happy, and that's the whole book.
Yeah.
And, there was one part that he brought up in the book that I thought was so cool. He's like, have you ever played when you were like a little kid and you're like, what superpower would you have? If you could have any superpower. Of course, mine was like, I'd be the Hulk. I want to be super strong, or I want to fly. I feel like Superman's just cheating.
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, that's a good one. Yeah. Yep. So he brought up, you'd think of all these different superpowers, and he's like, what if you had the superpower to completely change your mental state at any moment and just be in complete bliss at the snap of your fingers?
Wow.
And you like think about it, like, anytime you're not feeling good to just go like that and then you feel amazing.
Yeah.
You're like, that would be pretty sweet. And he's like, a mindfulness practice or a practice based on, observing just the present moment is exactly that. And it allows you to control your emotions, because his formula for happiness is essentially your happiness is equal to your expectations minus reality, so, or it might be the other way. So essentially, or reality minus your expectations.
Yeah.
So let's put it this way. If reality comes out better than you had expected, you're going to have a high happiness.
Yeah.
But if you were expecting this and something less happened, now you're not so happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or your expectations weren't met. And that's one of those things is we put expectations on everything.
Oh, yeah.
And think about it. Like you going on vacation. How many times do you get pissed off when you're on vacation and it rains?
Yeah.
Because you're like going to the beach. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Statistically speaking, like it is just insane for us to think that wouldn't happen.
Oh, for sure.
And the more we look at different daily occurrences, sometimes we really have these solid expectations that we've built that are so unrealistic.
For sure.
And all it is blocking our happiness.
Exactly.
Happiness is our default state. The only thing that makes us unhappy is expectations beyond of where it should be.
Wow, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's been talked about a lot more recently, like happiness and stuff like that. And it's like, what are you even living for if you're not happy? It's like there's not really a good answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So whatever it is that makes you get to that point, but like living in the day to day, I mean, you want to be optimized, solve for happy, and I think that's a great book. I mean, going off of that, like books and stuff, like. I know you know a ton of them. Like, what do you think are so app-wise? We got Headspace and then Calm is another one, right? I've never tried Calm.
I tried both. I just did Headspace because Tim Ferriss said to do it.
Yeah, I think I learned it from him too. Yeah. No, yeah. So I like Headspace a lot, and I think that's probably the best recommendation for anybody starting and listening, because it's easy, it's free, and then you can go deeper down, and you can probably stay with that throughout your whole journey.
The Wim
if you really
Hof breathing too. Yeah,
for sure.
The Headspace app is so amazing, so amazing. The different meditations I then like branched into were more just curiosity, to see which ones I liked and stuff like that. And I think it's a practice that you just got to figure out what makes you feel good, because that's the biggest thing for me is, I'm pretty consistent about it, but whenever I fall off the wagon, it's just so frustrating.
Yeah.
Because then I just ask myself, I'm like, why? Whenever I'm able to wake up, and I always do it, first thing in the morning. So when I wake up in the morning, I actually track all this on my Oura Ring because I'm a nerd. I'll do what they call a moment. And the moment is where you're basically just tracking in that moment what's going on with your body.
Okay.
So I usually do like a 45-minute meditation, right? And I turn this thing on, and it literally tracks my HRV, my resting heart rate, my body temperature, and I'm able to see day by day what it looks like.
That's so
and
cool.
I'll give you some of the pictures, or maybe we could put it up with this. But literally the last 2 days, I'll see that when I do a good meditation, like yesterday I had a good one, this morning, it wasn't the best.
Yeah.
But yesterday, you'll literally see my heart rate variability will just spike real high. And that's when I know, that's when I'm like, it's almost like I'm dreaming. So like it looks like what the metrics look like when I'm going and dreaming in a dream state.
Wow.
But I'm fully conscious and knowing what's going on. I do a lot of guided meditations from Joe Dispenza, but it literally will show it on my ring. Wow. And I'll need to get these pictures so we can put them up with it.
For sure.
But you could look at yesterday, and you have my baseline HRV there, which is over the past year where I'm normally at overnight. And you could see during my meditation, I spike up and past my baseline HRV, meaning I'm in more of a relaxed state, more of a coherent brain and heart in my meditation than I am in a deep sleep.
Wow.
Craziness, right?
That is crazy.
And that's something that it took me like a year to just count my breath. So this is it takes a lot of work. But when you start getting there, when you get these glimpses of it, that's why I recommend doing the Wim Hof. You do that and you'll taste some of this in your first 2 or 3 sessions. You need to at least do 3. But you'll feel this like, holy shit, that was like out of body, wild, and then it's just this cultivation of how do I chase that feeling? How do I get so into the current moment that like once you're there, and you're not worrying about anything else, you literally can call up whatever feeling you want. So each morning, it's like, I want to focus on love, on gratitude, and when I first started doing these meditations where you focus on emotions, they're like, feel love. And I'm like, what's love feel like?
Yeah.
And you start with little things, like just thinking of like my daughter, so like the day she was born, I remember like just looking like that thing is like that.
That's
like
you.
me,
yeah.
It was just like this crazy feeling. And I take what I call mental snapshots. So I could be on vacation, like when you're sitting there and you're like in the sun, you just get that like feeling. I love closing my eyes. I'm like, where do I feel this? I feel it on my skin, and my heart feels full with emotion. I have not a fear in the world. There's no weight on my shoulders. So I start to take these mental snapshots of these feelings, and I have just different thoughts, whether it's my dog, when she like lays on me and like I'm just like scratching her head and she's like licking my eyes. I'm like, oh, I love you. All these different things, but you can call those feelings up. And imagine starting every single day with an emotion that's so extreme that, I mean, don't get me wrong, an asshole could cut you off or some things can happen, you could fall off of it. But if you could start each day like that, why not?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like that a lot. I mean, I think that's like super, it's perfect. And like you think towards the morning is the best or better?
The reason I do the morning is because, once again, I have that monkey mind. So I literally have like this super soft alarm that barely wakes me up. I do not turn any lights on. I have my eye mask. I go right to the other room. I turn on my moment on my ring. I put the meditation on and I close my eyes. Because when I try doing in the afternoon, I do the Wim Hof in the cold shower in the afternoon because that cold shower wakes your ass up. And it feels good. So it energizes my day. And like you said, when I'm in the morning, I'll crawl over and do a meditation. I don't want to get in a cold shower first thing in the morning. Sorry, I'm not that tough. But just going and jumping right into that meditation, it's so much easier for me to stay into a deep meditation, and I'm not having all these thoughts running. And one of the biggest things I've realized is I cannot open an email, a text message, or look at any alarm. If I do that, that's what happened this morning. As I looked up just like 2 things, and I was like, oh, okay. And I just like put a mental note. And when I was meditating, it would just be like, oh yeah, don't forget this. And then it's like, oh yeah, text Kyle to see if we could start a little bit later. And I was just like, fuck.
Yeah. And that throws you off enough.
Yep. And
right?
you'll see in these two graphs how much lower mine was today. And I was really, really trying, but it was just because my mind was just racing with some other thoughts, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. I think no matter how long you've been meditating, what happens is if you can do that and recognize it, that's the win. It's not the times where I feel, amazing, as great as those are. It's the times when I sit there and I'm like, shit, there's a thought. Shit, there's a thought.
Yeah.
Shit, there's a thought. Because each time I do that, that's the real world practice. Get into that amazing out-of-body experience is awesome, but the real world application is the monkey mind slapping that and getting it back in
Every
place.
day. Yeah, exactly. Keeping it like constantly in line and organized. That's cool. So, I mean, is there like a graduation period like after Headspace? Like, do you go? Because I know I've heard other people talk about it, and they're like, there's never not everything works. It's not like a blanket thing, right? Not one practice works for everybody, but like essentially people. I was even in a Clubhouse thing. It's this new app where people talk and everything together. Some guys in e-commerce, and they were talking about how you can literally just sit in front of a blank wall and sit there and then think about nothing. And they're like, that's bad advice technically because it's really hard to do that for most people. But that's kind of like maybe pro or expert level.
Yeah, so
right?
There's some really cool shit now. So there's this app in this company called Trip. I think a cool name for it, TRIPP. And it's made to get used with those VR headsets. And dude, it is so trippy. Look it up. It's so cool. So it's like you'll be like going down a tunnel and it's like everything from geometric shape and patterns. Yeah. Like it's basically like an LSD trip or something like that, So, but what they do is it helps calm your mind and get you in a meditative state. So what they found is there's a lot of hacks to meditate, and we could do a whole nother podcast on this too, but they have like binaural beats. Yeah. And binaural beats are two different frequencies being played in each ear. And what they found is the different frequency, however much that frequency is, so if you have a difference of 10 between the two, it creates like a reverb, and your brain will sync to that reverb.
Yeah.
So they have different binaural beats to bring your brain waves down to a slower state, so that way you can get more into a relaxed meditative state. And they even can do it with flashing with the eyes. So there's different apps now that are even doing that. There's, I think it's called like psychoactive art, that are different art things that you can kind of look at and are kind of trippy kaleidoscope. But the whole idea is to just get you in the moment, not thinking all these thoughts.
Yeah.
One of the things I actually just got for Christmas that I'm nerding out about this year, this is going to be one of my big studies, is sound therapy. So I got a meditation bowl. If you've ever seen those Tibetan bowls where you're like, boom, boom. Dude, I got it for decoration because I thought it looks cool and I could put it in my meditation area. And I started playing it. If you get that thing going for like a minute or two, it's a little tough, so it's like fun to like play with. But all of a sudden I was just like, my girlfriend was sitting next to me and we were like, you feel that? Yeah. I was like, holy shit, I feel like my heart is just like, boom. Yeah. Like I feel like the waves are like coming in and pushing against my body. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. But when you graduate, it's really, I think, the fascination of exploring your mind and then seeing these different meditation practices. Because another meditation I started this last year, I guess I consider everything meditating, was scuba diving. Because when your body is thrown out of its natural element, you become hyper-focused. That's another hallmark of flow. That's why a lot of like extreme athletes get flow, because there's such a high risk that like they better be in the present moment. Yeah. So I've started doing indoor skydiving. I just went for my second time at iFly, and also the scuba diving, because I feel when you put your body and yourself into such an unnatural, space, it's so meditative for you, because it allows you to just really live in the moment and feel it. Yeah. And that's what it's all about.
That's probably, I think, where the sensory deprivation tanks are kind of forced meditation.
I just did one of those, I
did it a couple times, and I really liked it a lot, because I'm sure people, if anyone's listening, I'm sure it's kind of a way to like force yourself into meditation. That's what the guy told me. He's like, you can pretty much force it, because you're going in a room, it's pitch black if you want it to be. You're floating there, and he's like, after the first 15 minutes, most people the first time, and he said it gets more beneficial, the more times you do it in a row, I'm sure. But I think it's just like, that's a good way to look at it, because it's like your body's, you don't do that ever. You don't just sit in a floating pool where it's dark. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of other situations like you could put yourself in, but if you really want to be like, I want to see how that feels, to just, and you'll leave, and you're going to feel a lot different than you did when you went in there, which is, you can't really explain it, but if people want that like quick, easier form of starting meditation, maybe like, oh, this is why I would do that.
And we'll use a funny example. It's gonna get a little X-rated, but the mind, your internal experience, your mind can be so real. It has a downstream physiological effect. Our thoughts can literally change our genetic expression.
Yeah.
So in one of Dr. Joe Dispenza's weekend workshops, they did a blood panel on participants entering the workshop and exiting. And now our environment, our internal state, whether we're starving, whether we're stressed, whether we feel safe, it elicits different responses in the body, which create different proteins. So after a 4-day retreat, they switched. It was over 700. It was like 730 different genes were upregulated or downregulated. So some for healing were upregulated. And just think about it. If you're in more a peaceful state where you're feeling calm, relaxed, the body's going to be able to repair more.
Yeah.
Versus if you think you're threatened or you think you're under attack, it's not going to happen.
It's not what it's optimizing for. Kind of like what we
Exactly.
talked about in the last podcast that we did, where you mentioned why, sleep fast, why it works, because your body is given the ability to, if your gut doesn't have to use all that, whatever it may be, your body doesn't have to use that energy to digest. It has the energy to do positive things, right?
Yep.
Like that's, that's kind of what it is. You're either, what do they say? You're either growing or dying. So it's kind of very truthful there,
Yeah, and I mean, really, this is the way I look at it, is your mental state, that internal state. When you're able to meditate and you get to these deep states, like it's so real. Like you can wake up each day with that feeling of love.
Yeah.
And, most of us probably remember going through high school or puberty, where I definitely remember some dreams that were so real, they gave me a physiological response.
Feeling of love,
yeah. So this is one of those things that those thoughts can send chemical signals through the body, which will go to these different glands, your adrenal glands or reproductive glands, which then in turn produce a hormone, which then gives a down trickle effect to the body.
Yeah.
So whether it's giving you a hard on and giving you an orgasm in the middle of the night, or it's you thinking yourself into a healthy, relaxed state so your body can recover, these are physiological responses within the body that have an effect on your biology. So if we can make our mental state so real that it can make us have an orgasm, why don't we start each morning with an orgasm that we choose of our mental state for the day?
Yeah, you have complete control over it. And I'm sure I don't think there's any negative benefits to it, having control over it, right? It's just giving yourself more control, because otherwise the day takes you over. And I know it's super cliche, everyone says that, but it's like true. It's like sometimes I'm like, where did the day go? It's like, this is crazy because time flies. It's good if it flies and all, but it's not always, who are you living for? What are you doing then? I think what Tony Robbins said, he's like, if you don't, because he always does these mindfulness meditative practices, and he's like, if you don't have 30 minutes, you don't have a life. And it always resonates with me, because Tony Robbins like a multi-billionaire, and he's done it all. And and I know he does cold plunges and stuff like that, and maybe that's part of the reason. I'm sure there's a lot of health benefits on top of it, but at the end of the day, I think even being in my earlier to approaching mid-20s, I'm learning to be a little bit more receptive to new ideas, like you said you were, and especially when somebody, not only is it science backed, but you're like testing it. So if somebody's listening, it's like, oh, well, it's like, no. Whatever you've done, you've tested back with science.
And I've tested, doing different meditations different times, doing the cold plunges in the morning. I think it's so much of an experiment to figure it out, because I love doing the meditations early. And I know, when you and I first started, I used to start my first clients at 4:30 or 5:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to get up earlier than that. I would wake up at 3:40 a.m. And I was like, oh shit, I'm almost in the middle of my sleep still, that I get such a deep meditation because I'm still in like deep wave sleep. I ended up doing that for a week, and I fell asleep on the bus and missed my stop and like went down the 65, the Grand bus, all the way to like Nordica. Wow. And I was like, all right, this is not working for my lifestyle, my schedule. And it's a fun experience, because then there's some times where I did meditations for a week and I was like, this shit was stupid.
Yeah.
I did not feel anything from that, or I just got frustrated with myself. And that's great. You strike out, that's awesome, because you fucking swung.
That's how you learn. Exactly, right? I don't know. That's it. To expect anything to happen overnight, like it's the same thing. Like Tony Robbins also says this. He's like probably my favorite. Tim Ferriss is up there, but he's like the guy, because he does it all. But essentially, what he was talking about was everyone wants to change their state. You either do it naturally through exercise and healthy eating, or you do it unnaturally with drugs and alcohol, or et cetera, et cetera. So. There's
that
good
could
and
be
bad.
a whole nother podcast. That I think was literally my story and my lifestyle, and that's why I take it so seriously now, because it's like, I ran from like my emotional state. Like I wanted to change how I felt all the time. And whether that was in the gym, working out, whether it was a crazy lifestyle, partying and doing drugs, I really did not feel good in myself. And when I first started meditating, it was really uncomfortable. Like I did not like being by myself.
Yeah, it's
or sitting with my thoughts.
Yeah, and it's not like you're gonna finish the meditation after 3 days. It's like if you ran a 5K for 3 days in a row and you started off like 20% body fat, and you look in the mirror, you're gonna be like, and the meditation's no different. It's like you're not actually beating something. You're not taking a hard drug or something. It's not gonna instantly change. It might help instantly change your state, but it's probably one of those things that over time develops, grows. You get better at it, and then you're like, okay. And then doing it every day is one of those things of compounding nature.
It makes you recognize how much control you have.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And in anything, and it's so simple that it's not simple. And it's like a lot of other things, I guess, right? But no, yeah, I think this was awesome. And I think that should definitely be our next podcast. So you guys should definitely stay tuned because we'll talk about, changing your state and probably go over, I think, all that stuff and why people do it and how you can prevent it, maybe how you do things in moderation, in everything involved. Because I'm sure it's something that everyone is curious about. Maybe everything is getting,
I think that'd be a great one. I struggled a lot with depression and suicidal thoughts, so I would love to do a podcast on that because that's one thing I really am passionate about with learning all of this. Like
that'll be
I always just think of, so this is one of the ones in my meditation that I love is one of the things that I want to build in my career whenever I meditate about my job is I want to feel compassion, and when I did my sensory deprivation tank, I had this epiphany of what is compassion to me. And I was sitting there, you're like floating in space, you're traveling all through the universe. I don't know what's going on. Your mind's playing magic tricks on you. But I just remember sitting there and I remember seeing myself like years ago. And, I went through some tough times and I was really depressed and, like considering taking my life. And it was like this weird feeling of just knowing that like in this moment I feel so happy. Like I feel so, there's shit wrong in my life. Like my life is not a peachy, but my experience of how life is going is so amazing. Like I'm in love with like all the challenges and everything. And this compassionate feeling of like where I was then, I don't think I even could have imagined how I feel now.
Yeah.
I don't even know that I thought it was possible.
Yeah.
I thought that, thinking of killing yourself on the daily basis was just something that people did.
Yeah.
I thought that, not being okay with yourself sitting alone is just something other people have anxiety and stuff. I thought it was just normal. And it's like realizing the journey that I went on and all the cuts, scrapes, and bruises I had along the way to get me here. It's like, if I could bottle that up and just show people, like, that's what I want to do with my life. And whenever I think of compassion I'm like, that Steve from 4 or 5 years ago in that dark place, to be able to like hold them and say, hey, it's going to be okay. This storm cloud will pass and you have no idea what type of fucking sunny skies are on the other side. And that's just the message I want to have out there and share with people. So if we could do something on that,
100%.
I would love it.
That's perfect. Yeah, you guys can stay tuned for that because we're definitely going to do that.
Come back.
I think. Come back. I think it'll be a really awesome show. Steve, as always, is going to be a reoccurring guest. We're together all the time and always talking about new ideas that we can help share with you to hopefully benefit you guys and start the conversation. So if you like what you saw or you have anything that you want to, comment about, feel free to leave it because that's awesome. You could follow Steve on Instagram and Facebook and all those things at Steven Bechtold, correct?
Steven Bechtold.
Okay.
I think I said Steve the first time. I didn't even know my tagline.
It's all good. We'll put it all in the description. Follow me. Personal Instagram is Kyle Sulkar, and then as Sulkar Media for the media stuff, and then 4 Stars Podcast for the podcasting stuff. As always, you can check out Steve's stuff at thedadworkout.com and Sleep Fast Coach. All those things will be linked in the description. You guys, you want to work out at home, you can buy house gym gear, also in the description. Get everything going to get your 2021 start off mindfully. This is December 31st, so this is really a New Year podcast. Going to be bringing in a lot of episodes this year and hopefully get into the hundreds and plus marks. So want to build up a nice library for you guys to share our thoughts and different things. So super excited for that. So as always, thank you so much, Steve, for coming on today.
Absolutely.
I'm super excited. It's Thursday today. So is it Wednesday or Thursday? Thursday. So okay, going into the new year and a lot of cool things coming up. So with that being said, guys, once again, thank you so very much for watching the 4 Stars Podcast. Keep Jason the 5th.